It is week 11 of the college football season, and the West Virginia Mountaineers are traveling actually inside their own time zone for an away game as they travel to Cincinnati to play the Bearcats in Nippert Stadium. The game will be on Saturday, November 9th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time now. It will air on FS1. The BetUS odds on the game are Cincinnati minus 4.5 with the over-under of 56.5. And I'm here with my friend, partner, co-host Jonathan, and we're going to break it down here on episode number 15, I think it is, of the Gold and Blue Breakdown Show. Jonathan, how you doing tonight, man?
Hey, I'm doing good, Couz. Big 12 football at its finest. We went all the way out to Arizona the last time, and now we just make a quick bus ride over to Cincinnati. So, Big 12
That's right,
football at its finest.
Welcome to college football in 2024.
That's right.
As you all know, we do or if you may not know, you may be new around here. If you are, we do what it's kind of like a countdown. We count down 3 keys of the game, 2 key position battles, and 1 key player to watch. And then at the end, we will give our score predictions. We normally start by recapping last week's game. We don't have anything to recap, so we don't really need to do that this week, do we, Jonathan?
We don't. It was a busy week, but I'd encourage you to go back and watch our bye week episode. A lot of changes, a lot of moving, shaking. Sure, we'll get into some of that. But I'd encourage everybody to go back and check out that episode so we don't have to rehash what was a wild bye week.
Yep, absolutely. So let's go ahead and we'll just dive right in to the 3 keys of the game, not waste anybody's time. Oh, before I do have to waste your time. I do have to give a shout out to my sponsor real quick. Give us about 35 seconds and we will be right back.
Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com.
All right. Thank you for being patient and letting me give a shout out to Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner. If you need a medical malpractice or personal injury attorney in West Virginia, give them a call. Yourlawyeryourvoice.com online or 304-999-HURT by phone. All right, Jonathan. What is your first key to victory for West Virginia against Cincinnati on Saturday?
Yeah, so I just kind of alluded to it. We talked about it on the bye week episode, but for me, it would be changes on the defense. Curious to see where that goes. I think Cincinnati's going to test West Virginia. Probably would anyway, but especially considering there's been a change. Jordan Lesley out, Jeff Koonz in. So for me, it's just curious to see, are we going to see any changes? I mean, hey, it's no secret that West Virginia's defense has been a struggle all season. It led to a midseason firing of Jordan Lesley. Neal Brown talked about your personnel is your personnel. So I'm just curious to see with a new leadership for that unit to see how they perform. I'm a little bit nervous about the Cincinnati offense. I think they're pretty steady across the board. Got a good receiver, good running back. Brendan Sorsby at quarterback had transferred in this year's is a pretty good dual threat quarterback that they've got. And so I would assume that they would have tacked West Virginia anyway, but they probably have to be licking their chops a little bit with the confusion and the change there for West Virginia. So for me, I guess my first key is defensively, what are we going to see out of this unit? Is it just the same old that kind of got us in this little predicament that we're in on the season and those struggles? Or are we actually going to see some change? Was it some scheme things that they can work on, some personnel substitution, some changes here or there? Or at some point, do the players take a little bit of accountability themselves? And so I think first off, it's in-house for me, and I'm curious to see what West Virginia does defensively.
Mm-hmm.
Or Cincinnati's going to put up a lot of points, and if that happens, it's going to be a long day for West Virginia.
Yep. very fair point, and a good one. And just to remind us, for those of you who are new, and to remind those of you who aren't new, Jonathan and I do not compare notes. So if there is any, there's not going to be overlap on this one, but if there is any overlap later in the show, that's why we do this. We purposely do not share notes because we want to be authentic. But anyway, my first key, take care of the football. I know that's, sounds simple, but when you look at Cincinnati, they don't turn the ball over a whole lot. Brendan Sorsby's only thrown 4 picks. They've only lost 6 fumbles on the year, so 10 total turnovers. So the chances are they're not going to give you any turnovers, which means you cannot turn it over yourself, right? You've got to play a clean game, hold on to the ball. Nicco, we assume Nicco's going to be playing because of Garrett's being doubtful with an injury. Nicco needs to protect the ball. Don't, make smart decisions with the football, because the last thing you want to do is give Cincinnati extra possessions. Back to what you said, the defense, the pass game struggles, the pass cover struggles, whatever. The more you keep your defense on the sideline, the better. So in order to do that, you protect the ball. Do not turn the ball over. And because Cincinnati's probably not going to, and you do not want to lose the turnover battle.
Yeah. And we've seen Couz throughout the season. It does sound on the surface, it sounds so simplistic, right? Take care of the football.
Mm-hmm.
But if you'll go back and look, Penn State, it cost you. Pitt, it cost you. I think we could even look at some Iowa State, Kansas State at various times, specifically with some intercept. Just you have to take care of the football. These teams in the Big 12 especially, they're good enough on their own merit. They don't need your help. So you can't turn the ball over, and they're not going to give it to you according to numbers. So I agree with you. Good point.
Yep. All right. So what is key number 2 for Jonathan on this one?
Yeah. So number 2 for me is can Nicco continue his magic? And you spoke about it. It does appear that we're going to see backup quarterback Nicco Marchiol. And so we've seen him a couple times this year, right? We did see him briefly against Oklahoma State, but short. Saw him the second half of Kansas State, and it didn't go as well. But then he got a full week to prepare against Arizona, and because I think we both agree, and we talked about it on this show, that was a great performance.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
18 to 22. Just shy of 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. And really, and I said this prior, if you start to break down those throws, one was a lateral. It really was only off maybe 1 or 2 passes total. But even at that, 18 to 22 is pretty dang good. So can he continue that? He's continued to get reps. Of course, there was the bye week where they took a little bit of time off, but you have to feel pretty good if Nicco gives you a performance like he did against Arizona. Now, I will say I think Cincinnati is going to defend him a little bit, and once the book and the tape starts to get out, they're going to prepare a little bit different than maybe Arizona did. But for me, specifically offensively for West Virginia, can Nicco continue his magic?
Gotcha. Great one. I like it. My second key. Get pressure on Brendan Sorsby.
Mm-hmm.
I told you he won't throw. He may not throw you a pick. But here's some numbers I want to share with you. When looking at PFF grades, Brendan Sorsby, when under pressure, has a 50.4 PFF grade. So that's terrible.
Yeah.
Keep in mind it's scale 1 to 100. 65 is considered about average. 50.4. When he's not under pressure, when he has a clean pocket, 84.9, which is really, really good.
Oh, yeah.
So I know it's cliche because every quarterback throws better with a clean pocket, but in this case,
Sure.
You're looking at a 35-point difference. Huge difference. And then add into that, Sorsby, to me, his strengths and what he likes to do matches up well with West Virginia's weaknesses, which is, or at least one of their weaknesses, which is pass coverage over the middle. We've got a young linebacker core. They're really good. They're really talented. They're especially stopping the run, but they have struggled some in pass coverage this year. When throwing from 0 to 10 yards in the middle of the field, that's where 25% of Sorsby's throws will go, right where the linebackers are. And then up to 20 yards in the middle of the field, up to 40% of his throws. So 40% of his throws are in the middle of the field from 0 to 20 yards. That's a pretty big number. Does a lot less throwing to the sidelines, a lot of stuff across the middle, especially in that 0 to 10-yard range. So linebackers are going to have to step up and play good in pass coverage. That's not been a strength of the team. So therefore, how do you offset that? Offset that weakness, get good pressure on the quarterback. And that's something that West Virginia hasn't done great at this year. They're only 107th in the country in pass rushing grade, according to PFF, with a 64.7 grade. So it's not been, they're not great at it. So they need to improve this game and even Sean Martin talked about it in his press conference this week. They need to do a better job of getting to the quarterback and getting pressure. And that I think they need to do that in this game if they want to slow down that Cincinnati passing attack.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say 2 points on that, Couz. One, Cincinnati's offensive line is flooded with 5th and 6th year players. Mm-hmm. So they do have a lot of veteran leadership there. That's number one. Number two, and it kind of goes to your point, West Virginia's linebackers, for all they are, they're not excellent in pass coverage. And that goes to what I was kind of talking about on my first point with these defensive changes. Part of the issues with Jordan Lesley in this defense is he put, and Neal Brown even talked about this, it was constantly coming up that players were not in position to succeed.
Yep.
We saw that. And honestly, that could have been for lack of a better term, that could have been the final nail in the coffin for Jordan Lesley when West Virginia linebackers were out of position against Arizona receivers. And because they just don't cover well. So you have to put them in the best spot to succeed. And so I'll be curious if with the changes, if that does occur or if it continues to be a problem. So, yeah, good point. Going to have to get pressure on him. Absolutely.
All right. And by the way, it wasn't just any receiver. It was Tetairoa McMillan.
Yeah, one of the best in the country.
Yeah.
And it happened over and over.
2 times.
Yeah.
Neal Brown, like he said, so if it happens once, you kind of understand it. But to do it again after it blew up in your face the first time,
yeah,
probably not acceptable.
Yeah, not acceptable.
All right, what is your key number 3 for Mr. Martin?
Yeah, so for me, and you're really good with your numbers, but I took your lead here and kind of did a little bit myself. I think West Virginia has to be able to run the football. Have to. And I know here's the thing. I know we've said that before and kind of like the turnovers. It kind of sounds obvious, right? But Cincinnati hired longtime Iowa State linebackers coach Tyson Veit. I might get that wrong.
I know who you're talking about. I don't know how to pronounce it either.
Veidt. That's a little bit of a different one. But he runs that similar 3-man front that Iowa State does. West Virginia has had their fair share of problems against that front this year, specifically against Iowa State and Kansas State. Here's a couple numbers in running a football. Against Iowa State, running pretty much the same 3-man front defense. C.J. Donaldson, 9 carries, 17 yards, 1.9 yards per carry. Jaheim White, 12 rushes, 46 yards, 3.8. So they struggled. The following week, Kansas State. Again, same defensive setup, 3-man front. CJ, 12 rushes, 34 yards. That's under 3 yards a carry. Jaheim, 7 for 18, just over 2.5 yards per carry. But here's where it's funny, because Cincinnati gives up 163 yards rushing a game on the ground.
Yeah.
So if West Virginia can run, so it's that odd combination of Cincinnati is vulnerable to the run,
Yep.
But West Virginia doesn't run the ball well, even though that's a strength against that particular defensive scheme and setup. So something has to give. And for West Virginia to be successful on Saturday, as hopeful as you are that Nicco has another solid performance, if you're running CJ and Jaheim at 2.5, 2 yards, just under 3 yards per carry, I don't know that that's going to get it done. So they've got to be able to run the football.
I completely agree. And that's actually my third key to our first overlap of the show. And
there you go.
And I'm going to add on to that because I think one of the reasons they need to run the ball, and maybe the main reason, is they need to control the ball and control the clock. Again, keep your defense off the field. And you talked about it. Cincinnati is vulnerable on the defensive side to give up some yards in the run game. To add on to your numbers, which I appreciate you giving me because I didn't have those, they're 70th in the country in run defense, according to PFF, 77.7. So that's about middle of the pack. 92nd in the country, though, in tackle grade. So they're not a great tackling team. So if you can get to the second level, you can get some yards, I think, after contact. And CJ and Jaheim are both pretty good at getting yards after contact. I didn't look at their grades up for this exercise here, but they are. We've seen them play enough to know that. So I think West Virginia, on paper, should be able to run it. But there's one little problem. Two, actually. First, what you said, they haven't done it so far against this front. But two, there's a guy in the middle of the defense for Cincinnati that they call the Godfather. His name's Dante Corleone. He may be one of the best defensive – I don't even think he may be. He is one of the best nose tackles in college football, definitely in the Big 12. And that's going to be a really, really tough matchup. A tough player that, he's really good at plugging the middle, has a really good run blocking grade, which I'll actually touch on later. So I don't want to give away too much here, but add in that they got Dante Corleone in the middle. West Virginia hasn't done good against this defense. But then on the flip side, they do give up some rush yards, and they don't tackle all that well. So West Virginia, if they play their A game, the way they're capable of playing, they can get some yards on the ground, and they're going to need to do that, in my opinion, to win this game.
Yeah, have to. And we even saw against Arizona, we had discussed West Virginia had to be successful running the football as well to keep the Arizona offense on the sideline. Same similarities here. Completely agree. It's just that odd formula, if you will, of a team that is vulnerable to the run, a team that has success running the football, but they just don't match up well with that three-man front. So something's got to give, and you have to think that if West Virginia can get maybe that 4 or 5 yards a carry instead of that 2 and 3, and if they can get that 100 to 120 plus, even though they're giving up 163 versus the 80 or so maybe against Iowa State, Kansas State, going to have a little bit more success.
Yeah. And it's strange that they're not good at it because they go against it in practice every day.
Yeah, and Neal talked about that, against their struggles earlier. It's kind of I'm not going to pretend that I understand why that is. But
maybe one more reason. Yeah, I don't know either. It's weird. Could have just been a matchup thing. Could have just wasn't their night thing. I don't know. And another thing too, Jonathan, that I hadn't even really thought about until just now while you were talking. I'm not sure how much quarterback run game is going to be available because do you want to risk getting Nicco injured?
Yeah.
And have to go to your third string quarterback? How much faith do they have in their third string quarterback, which I'm assuming is Ryder Burton, the transfer from BYU? Yeah. Is he ready to go? Because if he's not, you're probably not letting Nicco run the ball a whole lot.
Mm-mm.
And that takes away a weapon because Nicco's not Garrett as far as his speed and shiftiness, but he can run the ball. He's got pretty decent. He's faster than he looks, and he's a stronger runner than Garrett. He can break tackles. But if he's not able to run the ball, if that's not really a good option for him, then it's going to lie solely on CJ and Jaheim.
Yeah.
And like you said, they're going to have to do better than they did in those other two matchups again, a lot of that falls on the O-line as well, but the run offense as a whole has got to do better.
Yeah. And Nicco, like Garrett, and it's a good thing, I guess, but he's not afraid of contact.
He's not.
But like to your point, you got to be really careful because after that you go to Ryder Burton, and then after that a true freshman who's not played a snap. Neither one, Burton. So got to be really careful.
Yep. All right, so I think we got our 3 keys out of the way. Let me remind you guys, you can find Jonathan and I on X. Jonathan's at Jonathan K. Martin, and it's Jonathan, Jonathan, K. Martin. You can find the Gold and Blue Breakdown Show on X at GB Breakdown _. And you can find me at Couz, at COUZ 206. If you want to interact with us over there. And Jonathan obviously has a lot going on over there. Jonathan, tell everybody a little bit about what you're doing over on X and what you have cooking for the future.
Yeah, so a lot of stuff. I always kind of tell everybody it's a one-stop shop for West Virginia sports, whether it's football, basketball, women's basketball. We cover it all. It's right there. You go right to my profile. There's articles, there's posts, there's podcasts, pretty much everything you can come up with, links to these shows, links to your Hoops from the Hills basketball coming up. So links, everything. So it's pretty much a one page. You can find pretty much everything you need right there on one page for you.
And did you recently change the name of your podcast? Did you not?
Yeah. So one kind of, I guess, quote, rebranding that we're doing is I share a lot of just thoughts, kind of direct and to the point. And so it's actually going to be On My Martin Mind. It's pretty much just going to be some of just my thoughts about certain things surrounding all of West Virginia. Just kind of some blunt observations to the point. So if you don't mind a little direct talk surrounding sports, it's probably your place. So, but to be fair, not going to go off Fox News here, fair and balanced, but there is some fairness, but we don't hide a lot. So get right to the point.
All right. Awesome. Thank you for that, man. And he mentioned Hoops from the Hills. I've got to bring that up real quick. I'm now back. I have now taken back over the Hoops from the Hills basketball channel, where I cover West Virginia basketball. Been doing some content over there. I have a preview show coming up. I actually interviewed a student at UMass who actually does he's a caller analyst for the student radio station there for UMass, so he knows the team really well. And he just so happens to be a West Virginia fan. He was born in West Virginia and roots for West Virginia, obviously, when he's not covering UMass. So pretty cool connection I made there. So that'll be up over on Hoops from the Hills. So come check us out over there if you like West Virginia hoops. All right, let's get on with the 2 position battles, Jonathan. What is your first position battle that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so you just mentioned his name. I went Brandon Yates versus Dante Corleone. And so you kind of talked about him prior segment. Yeah. Here's why I said that. We kind of broke down that 3-man front. West Virginia struggles running the ball against Iowa State and Kansas State. But if you go back and you can remember that game, granted, some of it, according to Neal Brown, was injury. But Brandon Yates really struggled having that man right over top of him. Kansas State and Iowa State were both really effective of playing them right over top of him. And I believe that kind of led to some of his bad snaps that we saw over and over. It's still been a little bit of a struggle. Corleone's really good, really good. 3 sacks, 4.5 tackles for loss, but this is 16.5, 9 sacks. He's played well over 100 snaps in his career. He just gets it done. And so I'll be curious against that front, West Virginia's interior offensive line, but I'm specifically watching Brandon Yates at center, especially with the new quarterback, if there's any little cadence differences, call differences with Nicco in there. So Brandon Yates is going to have a full plate come Saturday. So I'm really watching Brandon Yates and Corleone in the trenches.
Yep. It just so happens to be one of mine as well. Probably not a shocker because of the snap issues, because of the previous struggles. Just to add a little bit to it, though, Corleone is 9th in the country in QB hurries with 17, which is not bad coming from a nose tackle position. Little side nugget, though, I found in my research. Sean Martin's actually a little bit ahead of him with 18. Sean Martin is top 6 in the country in QB hurries.
Okay.
So hats off to Sean Martin. Just do me a favor, Sean, and actually get to the quarterback a few more times. But anyway, and I'm saying that in jest because he talked about it himself earlier in the week. So Dante Corleone, when you look at the PFF grades, here's the matchups. His overall grade 79.3. What's Brendan Yates' overall grade? 67.8. Dante Corleone's run defense grade 81.6, which is really good. Brendan Yates' run blocking grade 67.3. Pass rushing grade. Now, here's where Brendan has a slight advantage. Dante has a pass rushing grade of 69.4, which is not great. Brendan Yates has a pass blocking grade at center of 76.3. I'm sorry, 71.3. So slight advantage there, but not much of ones. But you could say they're about even, pretty much. So can Brendan Yates step up? Can he get control of his snaps? You know, we talked about controlling the football, right? You can't do that if the ball's on the ground. It's hard to do that when the quarterback's having to jump for the snap, and it throws timing off on the handoffs and on the plays. So they might even have to double him. You know, it wouldn't surprise me if you see Tomas Remack or even Jaquay Hubbard or someone maybe do some chipping. Him, you know, we'll see. But I think that's going to be a very, very key matchup to watch in this game because Dante Corleone is an absolute dog, an absolute stud. He's going to be playing on Sundays. May even be a pretty high draft pick. So I'll be anxious to see how good Brendan Yates does in this game.
Yeah, it's one to watch. Again, it's we started off this conversation talking about West Virginia's struggles running the ball against that front, but when you really start to break it down, there's so much more in-depth analysis there. And for whatever the reason, that front has given West Virginia a lot of fits. So I'll be curious to see if they have adjusted for that, especially with Nicco under center. They've had a week to prepare, actually a little over a week to prepare. I know we're not talking about it too, but another name to watch, former Mountaineer Jared Bartlett. I thought I'd throw him a plug just because we've covered Jared over the years. I don't have him listed, so I thought I'd go ahead and throw it.
Yeah, do it.
Because he's having his best year, statistically speaking, in college football. It's a great year for him. 5.5 sacks this season, 8 tackles for loss, 42 total tackles.
Wow.
He has been arguably, outside of Corleone, he's arguably been their best defender. Extremely active, something we've talked about here about how West Virginia's trying to get physical but be really active in space. He's had a phenomenal year. So something I'll talk about maybe in one to watch. But he's an important player for Cincinnati and one that West Virginia, I'll talk about a little bit here in a minute, could throw a wrench into maybe West Virginia's plans, but he's having a heck of a season.
I'm glad you brought him up because that was a connection I wanted to make, and it just had slipped my mind. But kind of makes you wonder. Kind of be careful. Kind of be careful how I say this.
Yeah.
Why he couldn't do that at West Virginia, and I don't think I'm not necessarily blaming it on him. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
What is your other position battle?
Yeah, so once again, it's funny when we start to look at all these, there's maybe even though we're not speaking the same in-depth analysis, but we're kind of speaking the same language. I went to West Virginia linebackers versus Cincinnati's tight end, Joe Royer.
I like it.
So I'll start off by saying you perfectly described earlier, West Virginia's linebackers do a lot of things well. Pass protection is not one of them, and they've got to get in the correct space. They got to get in the right schemes. Joe Royer is a transfer from Ohio State, and he has been, if you'll follow Cincinnati and you listen to some of their guys, they believe that Sorsby has really evolved because of him. He opens that. He's big target, second on the team in catches, second on the team in yards. I think he has a 30 or 40 yard reception, so he can go long and get it as well. West Virginia has Cole Taylor. They have Joe Royer. So I'm curious to see how West Virginia, as if they don't have enough defensively to be concerned about with everything going on, curious to see how they try and protect or try to cover him Saturday, because he could be a security blanket, has been for Brendan Sorsby all year. And West Virginia's linebackers really struggle in pass protection. So just curious to see how West Virginia goes with protection there.
Yeah. It's a great point, we talk about, and I haven't looked up, what'd you say his name was, Hoyer?
So Joe Royer, 36
Royer,
catches on the year. Yeah, 36 catches, 438 yards on the season.
I haven't looked in real deep at where he's catching the football and at what point on the field and all that, but I would imagine him being a tight end, a lot of those passes over the middle that I mentioned earlier in the show that Brendan Sorsby likes to throw are probably going to him. Again, I haven't looked at the numbers to verify that, but it's just kind of an assumption based on the fact he's a tight end, and that's usually where tight ends catch the football. Yeah,
but to give you a little bit of an idea, Couz, just kind of his last couple games, how much of a security blanket he is. Last week, 4 catches, 50 yards. Week before, 4 for 41, 8 for 84, 8 for 84 earlier this year, 7 for 66. So you've got back-to-back games where he went 8 catches for 84 yards and 7 catches for 66 yards. So when I start to analyze this matchup, I'm concerned about West Virginia having a weakness there in covering in pass coverage, and B, I'm concerned that Sorsby targets him quite often and is a security blanket for him. So really interested to see how Koonz draws it up to cover him.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was trying to pull up his grades here. 80.4 receiving grade.
Yeah.
Doesn't drop the football either. His drop grade is 90.6.
Yeah, it's getting it done.
So very, very good football player. And getting an opportunity, because it's my understanding he didn't play a whole lot at Ohio State.
Yeah, he didn't, Couz. Last year he had, in fact, Couz, he's got a combined 4 catches prior. In 23, he had 1. 22, he had 2 catches, and in 21, he had 1. So he has really had a breakout season. And Cincinnati, hey, listen, to their credit, gosh, if you go all the way back to episode 1, I believe it was, we talked about the Big 12, and we spoke about then months ago how Cincinnati overhauled that program with transfers, and Sorsby's one, but Joe Royer's another. He has really elevated his game this year.
Yeah. Awesome stuff, man. I love it. All right. My second key position battle is West Virginia's defensive line against Cincinnati's offensive line. You talked about how many veterans their O-line has.
Yeah.
And I mentioned earlier how important it is for West Virginia to get pressure on Sorsby. So that's why I think this matchup's important. I mentioned earlier West Virginia's 107th in the country in pass rush grade. They need to do better than that. And to be fair to the secondary and the linebackers, we've talked about West Virginia's pass coverage. When you're 107th in the country in pass rushing grade, that doesn't help your secondary out. It doesn't help your linebackers out. So as far as the pass coverage goes, so you need to do a better job getting to the quarterback and putting pressure on the quarterback. Cincinnati is 25th in the country in receiving grade and 44th in passing grade. We all know, and we know West Virginia's been 134th last in pass coverage grade. So again, how do you offset a weakness? You got to have to find a strength to try to use to balance it out. And pass rushing is a strength you do, and right now West Virginia has not been able to do that. Maybe Jeff Koonz can do something different. Maybe he dials up more exotic blitzes.
Yeah.
Jordan Lesley wasn't being super aggressive. He was being very conservative in his play calling in that regard. Maybe Koonz changes it up and they get more aggressive. Who knows? I'll be anxious to see what he does here. But they need to figure out some way to get pressure on Sorsby, in my opinion. And one way you do that is West Virginia's D-line needs to do a better job getting to the quarterback and taking some of that pressure off the secondary, because they do like to make big plays downfield. They're a big play team.
Yeah.
We haven't really talked about that much, but if you look at their numbers, they have a lot of big plays. And that's the one thing West Virginia has struggled with defensively, is giving up the big plays. So I think West Virginia's defensive line in this game needs to play. They played well all year, and then primarily in stopping the run.
Yeah.
And we haven't even talked about Corey Kiner yet, have we? Running back for Cincinnati, who's really, really good.
Yeah.
But I'm not as worried about that, because I trust him to stop the run. I just don't trust him to stop the pass, and that's what they have to do in this game with Sorsby.
Yeah, and West Virginia has done fairly well this season at stopping the run game, the opposing team's run game. They did it against Arizona. So I look for Cincinnati to really try and throw the ball a lot. But, does it not seem, Couz, like every week there's that one massive bust, that one huge play? And so, really curious to see. And that's kind of why I led the show off with the defensive changes. Not sure what we're going to get. Is it the same old, or can you expect a little bit of a different scheme? Maybe some blitzing a little bit different, just something dial them up. So be curious to see what West Virginia does defensively.
And in all fairness, I mean, Aubrey Burks was going to be playing the spear position this year.
He's out this week.
And one of the reasons was because he was good at rushing the quarterback.
Yeah.
Pass rushing ability, and he has missed a huge portion of the season. So that, that's probably impacted some things that they wanted to do as far as getting pressure on the quarterback, and there's just been, and they haven't been able to figure out a way around that injury, and nobody else has stepped up. But I mean, if you want to take pressure off your D line, then you got to use your linebackers, your safeties, your edge rushers. They've got to do a better job as well. So that they have to be accounted for. When you don't have to account for anybody else, it's a lot easier to block 3 guys with 5,
Yeah.
So, or 4 with 5 in some cases.
Yeah. Aubrey Burke's out this week. So is cornerback Aiden Garnes again.
Yeah. And Jaden Bray, wide receiver Jaden Bray.
Yeah. And I don't know the last I heard about Kiki Tarno, cornerback. There was some discussion there.
I think I heard Neal say he's back.
Okay,
week.
so
I thought already, and he's played fairly well when he's been in. So maybe he can be a bright spot for us.
Yep. So be curious to see what they do defensively.
All right, let's go to the next segment, which is the one player to watch. Who's your one player? I know this. You've been chomping at the bit for this one. Who is it?
So I went with Jaheim White, and on the surface, I get it. That's obvious, John. Right? I mean, come on. But I went for a couple reasons. Number one, I actually feel like the tape is there for West Virginia to solve the mystery of why they can't run the football against that front. I think they get it done. Number two, I talked about Jared Bartlett, former West Virginia player. He's going to be out in space a little bit, trying to cover Jaheim, especially in the pass game. Why do I say the pass game? You got Nicco in the game. Nicco's going to start by all accounts. He's kind of been a security blanket. We talked about that on the Cincinnati side. Jaheim's been a little bit of a security blanket for Nicco as well in the pass game. Some wheel routes. They haven't connected on all of them. So actually pick Jaheim White, not because I think he's necessarily going to run the ball well, which I think he will. I think they'll solve that. I actually think they'll kind of throw to him out of the backfield a little bit as well with that. There was some success there against that front. Against Iowa State and Kansas State, throwing the ball in to the backfield. Didn't have success running it, but they had a little bit of success throwing the ball out of it. So I think this sets itself up for Jaheim.
I like that pick, man. I like the direction you went with that. You might have made an obvious pick, but you went in is unobvious a word?
It is tonight.
Not so obvious. I'm making it up.
I mean,
Word of the day is unobvious.
It is now.
It's the not so obvious direction you took it in is what I liked. All right. Speaking of obvious, I'm going to be Captain Obvious and say Nicco Marchiol.
Yep. I like it.
See y'all. Good night.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a given, but I mean, it's just going to be his fourth game starting, I guess, overall, second this year.
Yeah.
Coming off a really good performance against Arizona. I think the Cincinnati defense is better. I don't even know if I think the Cincinnati defense is better than Arizona.
Yeah.
I'm not sure think is even the right word to use there. They are. And Arizona's been riddled with injuries too, though, in fairness. But nonetheless, Cincinnati, it's going to be a tougher test for him. So I'm going to be anxious to see how well Nicco plays. In that game in Arizona, he had a lot of family there to watch him too.
Yeah. He's
going to be back on the East Coast again. Not sure if that matters, but I'll be anxious to see how he plays. I'm excited about Nicco. I think he's our QB of the future. I think he has a bright future, and I think he can be an absolute dog and one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12 going forward. That has to start now. And if West Virginia, they have that much of a chance to make it to the Big 12 title game.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, they've got to win out. And to win out, you got to have good quarterback play, and it all starts on Saturday with Nicco.
Yeah, I love that pick. And I'm really interested to see Nicco, right? Was the Arizona game the perfect storm for him? And what I mean by that is he's comfortable. The team was reeling. They went on the road, almost kind of a nothing to lose mentality. And he played well. Or is it maybe he just fits this scheme a little bit better? Maybe he gives you some things that Garrett doesn't. He had a full week to prepare. I just keep going back, Couz, and we talked about this. The play against Arizona where he felt the pressure, he slid up in the pocket, and he threw it to Traylon Ray where only Ray could catch that football, walked 5 yards into the end zone. I'm not trying to overblow one single play, but that to me fit more into what West Virginia is looking for, right? It wasn't a panic scramble. It wasn't just throw it in double cup. It just seemed so natural just to slide up in the pocket and a perfectly thrown ball. So I'm encouraged to give him another week and a half, if you will, with the bye week. It's going to be healthy Jaheim, healthy CJ. It's going to have all of his offensive weapons at his disposal. White Milam's going to be back. So yeah, really intrigued to see what we get there out of Nicco, but I'm encouraged and feel like with the time to prepare, he's going to play well.
Yep. I like it. I like your confidence. Now, the fun part. Score prediction. What you got for me?
Yeah, so struggled with this one. I've admittingly tried everything this year on the score predictions. I've tried that if I pick West Virginia, maybe I'll be wrong. I've tried every formula known to man. We don't have enough time to go over my formulas. So when I sat down and really looked at this game, I just kind of thought, you know what? Throw caution to the wind. What's your heart tell you? What's your heart tell you? Crazy enough, Couz, my heart tells me West Virginia wins this football game. So I got West Virginia 27, Cincinnati 24. You know what, weirdly enough, and I don't say weirdly enough because it is still a possibility mathematically, but I think this team actually does think that they can still get in the Big 12 championship game. I think they believe that Cincinnati's a team they can beat. They're close, going to have West Virginia fans there. Then I think they come back home and play 2 winnable games, and then you throw caution to the wind to end the season. So I actually believe West Virginia thinks that. I think West Virginia is going to play really hard defensively after the change. Listen, we've been critical of Jordan Lesley. We've been critical of this defense. But those guys go to work every single day. Even if the results aren't there, they go to work every single day for Jordan Lesley. That had to sting. It had to sting.
Agreed.
And there's a pride factor there. There's a if you've ever worked anywhere and maybe your supervisor's been let go, it's really easy to feel like you caused that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think these guys are going to be excited to switch it up a little bit, but I think they're going to play with a little bit of extra passion for Jordan. So I'm excited there to see what they do, see what differences we see. And then we just talked about Nicco, giving him a little bit more time. Does he get more comfortable? West Virginia's a little bit more healthy. I just feel all things being said here, this is a game where West Virginia can sneak into Cincinnati and win the football game. So I pick West Virginia 27-24 in this one.
Wow. I didn't see that coming. I'm going a little bit different direction, man. I have been in such a negative headspace with this football team really ever since the Kansas State game. Even despite the win at Arizona, I just didn't think their weaknesses continued to show their rear its head. They didn't look any better on the defensive end or defensive side of the ball. And I know they made the coaching change, but I just don't know how much you can actually change with the same players running the same scheme.
Yeah.
How much can you really change at the end of the day, other than maybe being more aggressive? And I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not a coach, but I think when it came down to it, Jonathan, I just don't like this matchup for West Virginia. I don't like the Dante Corleone we talked about with the 3-man front we talked about. I don't like Brendan Sorsby's ability to throw the football. We haven't even talked about Xzavier Henderson, their good wide receiver, who's caught, I think, 53 balls this year for over 500 yards, or 43 balls for over 500 yards. I don't like that matchup with any of our DBs. The Royer, the receiver, the tight end, I don't like that matchup. Just a lot of matchups I don't like, man.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I think it's going to be a high scoring game. I don't think either defense is going to be necessarily do a great job of stopping the other team. And I think the games gets into the 30s, and I think we're looking at a Cincinnati 38-34. Cincinnati. It's kind of where my head is right now.
Okay. And can't argue it. Here's the crazy part about it. Everything you said, I agree with 100%. And by every single metric that I have picked, or on paper, or PFF grades, or statistical categories, whatever, says this is a game Cincinnati should win. I'm just more confident as I sit here right now with the West Virginia offense. I feel really good there. I actually feel really good about the special teams. I think that'll matter. The defense, I do not like those matchups, but I think, and you said, what can you do? I agree. Hey, Neal Brown's he said as much. Your players are your players. Personnel is personnel. I just feel like with a change here, a change there, and maybe just with a little bit more heart.
Maybe a different voice helps.
Maybe. I don't know. And again, I cannot sit here and disagree with the words you said. In fact, I agree with everything you said. Almost surprised myself. I just feel like this is one of those games where somehow West Virginia shouldn't win it, but they find a way to get it done.
Makes sense. I like it.
And then, hey, you got a lot to play for here. And again, small, but Cincinnati's 3-2. They've got a lot to play for as well.
Yeah.
You got to feel pretty good, right? That a two-loss team, while Iowa State and Colorado would have to lose, but the Big 12 is drunk this year. You feel like the odds are probably pretty good that there could be a two-loss team playing. And, where does Cincinnati go next week? At Iowa State.
Yep.
So do you catch them? Maybe look. I don't know. By every single metric, I 100% agree with you. Just got a weird feeling they get it done.
And another thing too, which we haven't even touched on, which coach is better out of a bye week? Now that's both teams are coming off bye weeks, so which coach is going to have their guys more ready? Obviously, Cincinnati hasn't been going through the coaching changes, so I mean, realistically, you'd think they would be more prepared, more ready. But we all know that sometimes coaching changes make guys, like you mentioned, make them play more inspired. So it'll be interesting to see, man. I'm looking forward to the matchup.
Yeah.
Obviously, based on my prediction, my expectations aren't that great. But as always, I'm going to be sitting there yelling at the TV, cheering for my team like I always do. But I just my headspace is not great right now, and I'm probably in a more pessimistic space than I've been in recent memory, man. I can't remember the last time I was this pessimistic about West Virginia football. Maybe 22, but I don't even think then I was. Because then at least I thought, well,
yeah,
I felt well. The way they ended that season helped, but I knew they had it was first year with a different offensive coordinator. I knew there were some changes made, so you could kind of justify it, right?
Yeah.
There's no justification for them to be where they are right now, in my opinion, and to be playing the way they are. So I just can't. It's hard for me to swallow it all. And so anyway, so I'm having a hard time picking them to win anything at this point, man.
I will say though, you say that, but if you go over to my Twitter page, every Saturday morning we publish a previews and predictions. Myself and you and a couple of your Couz's Corner and our teammates there. You are leading the season standings.
Wow.
So that'll be coming out Saturday for Cincinnati. So, but a little breaking news there. You are leading the season. So I don't know if that's a good thing considering you picked Cincinnati to win 38-34. Game over.
Is there a prize if I win, Jonathan? Or, what do I get? Do I get a pat on the back or what?
To be determined. But you are winning.
I can't dry ginger ale, maybe?
Yeah. So just nonetheless, I think it'll be a good game. I actually think that even matchups aside, it's probably two pretty evenly matched teams.
Agreed.
Honestly, it could come down to something quirky because it could be a missed field goal. It could be a fumble late. It could be who knows. We'll see.
Yep. Agreed, man. Well, everybody, thank you again for tuning in to another episode of Gold and Blue Breakdown. We enjoy doing this each and every week. I know I do. Jonathan and I both stayed up really late. We're not going to talk politics, but we both stayed up really late watching the coverage because we're both kind of into it and find it exciting. So we're both pretty tired, but I was not missing the show, man. I look forward to it every week, and it's a lot of fun, man. I appreciate you breaking this thing down with me.
Absolutely. Enjoyed it.
Everybody, make sure to tune into the game Saturday. If you're not attending the game, for those of you attending the game, be safe. Make sure if West Virginia wins, you stay around to sing Country Roads inside Nippert. There's nothing like singing Country Roads inside a visitor stadium. You might get a few birds thrown at you, but that's okay. Hang out, sing it with your team or with your fellow fans and the West Virginia players. In the meantime, catch me over at Hoops from the Hills. Catch Jonathan on his show. Catch him on X. Watch my other shows here on Couz's Corner. Interact with us. We love interacting with our listeners, our followers.
Yep.
Appreciate everybody's support. Everyone have a great rest of your day and Q Country Roads.